Hello everyone, I'm Daniel and I'd like to welcome you to our Facebook live session here from the Facebook office in London. We're going to talk about a topic that we haven't talked in any of the live sessions before, which is machine learning, which I know a lot of you that are probably listening will be interested in. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about a few questions that a lot of you have asked us before, and we'll also encourage you to ask us questions in the comment section so that we can answer as many of those as well. I'd like to introduce you to the engineers that have joined me here today. So Daria, do you want to start?
Hi Daniel, I'm Daria. I'm a software engineer at Facebook. I've been here for 3 years and now I work on ads ranking team. We do machine learning models to show the best ads to our users. And some users, find ads annoying and we're trying to eliminate that and just show them only the meaningful content which they would like to engage with. And it's a win-win for both the user and the advertiser. And to do that, we use large deep learning models, which should be of interest to our audience.
I'm sure it will be. Thanks, Daria.
Hi, Daniel. I'm Maria. I'm an engineering manager on content integrity. Our team is responsible for reducing the prevalence of objectionable and harmful content from Facebook, meaning that we try to get to bad content before our users can tell us that it's bad.
Yep, thank you.
Hi Daniel, hi guys. I'm Fabrizio. I've been working at Facebook for a little bit more than 2 years. I'm now in applied machine learning, which is a team, an organization in Facebook that is responsible for, producing machine learning models and machine learning tools for the whole company. Before that, I was working in search, still doing machine learning, but within search, where I've worked on query suggestion problems and things related to that.
Yes,
Thank
I know.
you.
And we worked together before on
Yes.
that, I know that. And Eamon is quite new to London. That's
Yes.
very, very exciting.
Yes.
So yes, hi, I'm Daniel. I'm an engineering manager here in London. I worked on search for about 5 years here before very recently transitioning to the community integrity space here in London. And I specifically focus with my team on fake accounts and specifically removing those from the platform as soon as possible after they register, so that they don't get the opportunity to, produce the kind of harmful content, for example, that Maria was talking about, but also a range of other types of very harmful and damaging behaviors that we can see from those kinds of accounts. Okay, so let's maybe start with one of the questions that we hear a lot about, and that is what attracted you to apply and then come to Facebook to do your work.
Oh, I can take
Yeah,
that one.
why not?
So one thing that really attracted me to Facebook is the freedom to pick what you want to work on. Here at Facebook, we're allowed to move around the company, to change projects, to change teams. So you can always work on something you're passionate about.
Great, thank you. Actually, I can chime in on that very quickly because I actually did a lot of that. I did a hacker month, in fact, in the team that I now joined when I still was back in search. And that was a great experience. I think, just it's a great way to sort of develop your career, I think, without having to, sort of leave the company. Anyone else? What are the reasons?
I can say something about that. I guess one of the reasons, or let's say one of the main reasons why I decided to join Facebook is mainly because of the possibility of impacting, on, let's say, on the people that are actually using our platform. I come from an academic background. I was working in research, and there you were, writing papers, and when you're lucky, you are impacting on the life of, 100 of readers. And here, the scale is a totally different one, and I guess that was actually really intriguing to me and really attracted me to join Facebook.
Great.
So for me, I actually first went to Facebook for an internship when I was studying at the university, and I wasn't confident enough to apply at first, but some of my friends have already been for an internship and they encouraged me to do it, and I sent a letter to the recruiter, and that's how it all started, and now it brought me here.
That's
So
wonderful. What was your internship project?
I was in ads payments infrastructure.
Okay, that wasn't not in London back then?
That was in Seattle.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have a lot of stories of I think interns that do like it and do convert to full-time employees. Okay, so just a reminder, do give us questions that we can answer. In the meantime, we will press on with the next one that's quite common, which is how or what surprised you when you first joined Facebook. There's a lot of potential preconceptions about working at Facebook, at a big company in general. What were the things that you found surprising?
Yes, so for me, what surprised me is that there's no real code ownership. You have all the repository open to you and you can modify whatever you want. You can go ahead and work on something that you're passionate about and you think that is a good idea, and no one would stop you to try and experiment with things. And sometimes it even ends up in shipping those things, and that is very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like actually to add something on top of what Daria just said. I mean, on top of the fact that you can modify all the code that you have in front of you. I mean, I think that let's say, how easy it's to do that. I mean, the infrastructure that we have is really, really great. I mean, it allows you to, let's say, do things that without it, they would take like weeks in a matter of days. I mean, again, like reviewing code or like, running distributed processes, like for machine learning, this is very important. I mean, you get to do that with a very, very little effort. And this is really, really surprising. I mean, at least this is what surprised me most when I started to, work effectively at Facebook. I mean, it's really, really good.
Yeah. I guess especially around the ease of pushing and experimenting with machine learning models, I think AML plays a very important role in that story. So I think having that backbone of sort of productivity tools is really important. I think for every engineer.
It's literally just pressing a button.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, basically every engineer at Facebook should be able to be a machine learning engineer if they if it's also solving a problem.
True.
Okay. Let's see. There's an interesting question that we talk about a lot, which is what does an ML engineer at Facebook sort of actually end up doing on a day-to-day basis? So I think we can go maybe a little bit into all the different types of work that you all do. Maybe I can start with a very general sort of observation, which is that the work that an ML engineer does at Facebook is still very much an engineering role. So you kind of will take the kind of work you do throughout its life cycle, from very early inception of thinking about the problem that you might be trying to solve, seeing if machine learning can be applied, formulating as machine learning problem, collecting data, proving out the idea. All of those kinds of things are part of the journey that you will do to then actually build the model, do feature engineering, the sort of the more traditional parts that I guess you would consider sort of ML engineering. So yeah, maybe you can give us a little bit more flavor of the types of work that you've done in your day-to-day work with machine learning. Any of you?
I can add on what you just said. I mean, one particular aspect that I find like in common, let's say, also with my previous academic, is that you get to actually try to go and implement, let's say, state-of-the-art results. So you get to read papers, like scientific papers, and that's really exciting because it puts you like really on the edge of the area, and it's really exciting. You learn lots of things. You never stop to learn, and it's really fun, I would say. That aspect. Of course, there are other aspects. I mean, it's fun as well, but writing code to implement that and stuff like that. But I consider that aspect really, really interesting. For us, I would say.
And I guess we do solve problems that do require novel solutions in most cases.
Yeah, so adding to what Fabrizio said, in our team we have a reading group, and people sometimes read new papers and they propose for the whole team to read something and discuss whether we should try to implement this, and something comes out of it sometimes, which is like so cool.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it, and you feel that you're trying to stay up to date with the latest innovations.
Yeah, excellent. Maria, anything?
Not much. I've transitioned to management a while ago.
Do you remember those days when you were actually doing the engineering?
Yep. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, I guess there's the elements of evaluation. I think we'll probably come to that a bit later, talking about like how we run experiments and all of those kinds of things. We've got a great question here from Frederick. Thank you very much for that. Who asks, do we use machine learning for our translations? And the unsurprising answer is yes. We do. I don't know if anyone wants to talk a little bit about that.
I'm not really an expert. I mean, there is a team in AML called Latte, Language Technology, that actually develops the whole infrastructure for translation. They're using, like super state-of-the-art, actually. I mean, they're actually improving the state-of-the-art of sequence-to-sequence models. And, I mean, there's been a recent breakthrough that's been awarded, like, the best paper on a recent conference that is unsupervised machine translation, meaning that you can actually translate between two languages, even if you don't have any examples of, like, parallel corpora for those two languages. And I consider these like a major results. And it's very, very important for the minority, languages spoken by minorities, where you might not have enough, training data. In that case, you can still provide translations, which is very, very important for users facing products like that.
Yeah. This is really wonderful. I think translation is actually a really great example of how we use machine learning to really benefit the core mission of the company, to enable people to connect and to share ideas. I think that's a really, really exciting area. Thanks for that question. Next one that we do get a lot is, how much autonomy do we have to do our both research work and then also kind of the engineering work, and how we kind of split our time between those. So anyone wants to talk a little bit about autonomy and how we, day to day, how we do our work?
Yeah, I can start.
Sure.
So there are no strict rules, and you can decide for yourself how much time you want to spend doing the research in your area and how much time you will do work with more straightforward gains, like usually it's infra stuff, and all machine learning, of course, it's not as straightforward, and you have to try a lot of things, and not all of them necessarily bring you gains, but you always learn something from it. And no one would stop you from trying something if you really want to, and you just discuss it with your manager how you want to spend your time doing things.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's great that at Facebook we have so much autonomy to do our jobs, and we get as engineers to do the research, to propose solutions, and then it's up to our teams or our managers to give us feedback on what we came up with. But it all boils down to us having responsibility to do our day-to-day job really well, which is great.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, like, talking about that from a manager's angle, right? I think it's actually really exciting, exhilarating sometimes when you're in these conversations and you talk about ideas that no one else on the team or maybe anywhere else in the world has ever thought about, and there's this person that you work with every day and comes up with this brilliant idea, and like everyone gets excited, and I think those are some of the most fun and exciting moments. I agree. Great. Anything?
Well, I can speak for what I did when I just joined Facebook. I mean, you were there, so you remember that. Basically, I noticed that a specific part of the product we were working on was not there, and I said, I'm gonna do it. And you were like, all right. And so actually I did it, and it's now live on Facebook and used by many people. And I mean, nobody actually told me, yes, you should work on that. I actually came up with that idea, and it is there. I mean, it's very, I mean, I would not have expected that, I mean, to be honest, by looking, at people from outside, colleagues from outside. Yes.
Yeah. I think it's one of those areas that really enables us to innovate and develop quite quickly, right? There is no kind of set pattern that is sort of set in stone, but that people really propose all sorts of interesting and crazy ideas all the time. Excellent. Let's see. How do people work across different teams? So obviously Facebook is a has a number of global offices. So yes, I think there's a good question around how do we, how are those teams set up so that they can succeed, and how do they collaborate?
I think most of the collaboration happens through shared goals. So we as integrity teams work a lot with our community operations, our moderators, our policy members, and privacy members as well, to come up with solutions to these sorts of issues. So it's really all about making sure that different teams are working towards the same goal.
Okay, can you then talk a little bit about how, when those teams work on those shared goals together, how, kind of what tools do they use, or how do teams work together?
I feel like it's mostly through meetings and just tracking progress over week over week. A lot of it comes up in planning, and the engineering will say, well, we want to reduce this type of objectionable content, and in order to do this, we need this many reviewers. We also need these approvals from these teams. So you get together, you discuss it, and then all the relevant teams go and say, okay, this is what we can provide you with in this time frame.
Yeah, that's great. Any other takes on this? I know that we collaborated quite closely with the FAIR team in Paris at some point. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because obviously that's actually quite an interesting.
Oh, sure. I mean, especially especially for
work.
people in in the area of artificial intelligence, ML in general. Collaborating with people that, let's say, whose main goal is actually just to advance the state of the art and provide breakthroughs is like one unique value. And even when I was in search, and especially now that I am in AML, the opportunities of collaborating with FAIR Paris were multiple, and it was actually a very, very fun activity, in the sense that you got to actually go to Paris and meet them, and work with them, and it's interesting because they are also very, very, let me pass the term, eager to, let's say, to contribute to products in practice, although their main goal is not necessarily that of impacting the products at every let's say engineers at Facebook are usually working on. And it was really, really fun, and we are continuously collaborating with them. Actually, there is FAIR in London. They open both AML and FAIR at the same time in London. So now collaborations is even easier, I would say.
Yeah. So maybe just for the audience, the FAIR organization within Facebook is quite a special one, in that it really has a very long time horizon in terms of its outlook. And while really pretty much everyone at Facebook tends to have very specific product impact in mind, sort of from, on a month-to-month basis, I think the FAIR work is very special in that it really has this much longer-term research outlook, and a lot of the work there is very academic in nature. And so finding ways to collaborate between those two different worlds is really exciting.
Although AML, to be honest, sits in the middle.
It does.
It's like not short-term as a product team is, and it's not as long-term as FAIR is, that it wants to solve, artificial general intelligence. It's quite long-term, I would say.
Right. Okay. Did you want to say anything else? Otherwise, we move on to the next question, which is an audience question, and this is an interesting one. Let's see how this one goes. Do you remember the most rewarding experiment that you have run using machine learning? And I guess rewarding can be really interesting in terms of just sort of surprising, right? Maybe when you're trying to prove or disprove something, and then you learn something that's completely unexpected.
Again, not unexpected, but rewarding, in the sense that, as I said, when I started, I decided to work on this query suggestion problem, and I remember the first, machine learning model, the first model that we shipped. I was there like, okay, I hope it works. I know it works, but I really hope it works, and it worked. Quite well, I would say, and that actually was like, very, very, like, I really, really liked that moment. It was like, okay, now I really, really feel good. I remember I really feel, and it's It's actually the same for all the experiments that we run, but the first one is always like the one that you want to really.
Yeah, but also there are times when your first experiment does not work and it takes so much time debugging it. But when you finally get it right, it's so rewarding.
Right.
And that happens, I guess, a lot. Not
I
everything works right.
Yeah,
from
I think
the
it's
beginning.
usually the case, right? That you sort of have an idea and you really have to kind of iterate over it. And I think the case that you were describing, I think there is an interesting parallel to sort of if you come in to Facebook from sort of the outside and you have some amount of knowledge that might apply or might not apply. It's always interesting to see if in this kind of, with the kind of data we have, obviously it's sort of a very graph-based, very kind of potentially noisy data. Does the kind of knowledge that I've gathered in university or in another company still apply or not? And sort of trying some of those experiments can be quite interesting.
Yes, true.
And then there's the completely novel stuff, which, probably will fail before it works. I agree. Great, let's see. Maybe actually developing a little bit along those lines. Can you describe the role that you've played in developing a product? So maybe talking a little bit about the product itself, and I know you both probably have already covered that a little bit, and maybe Mario, you can also talk a little bit about that. And then what kind of contributions maybe that you kind of made to that? What was the improvement maybe to the end product that the machine learning model or whatever it was that you built sort of made?
So there is this one product that we tried out. It was shut down, unfortunately, but we tried to make a personalized help center. So when you land on the help center page, we would try to identify why you're there. And that was a really kind of interesting product from that perspective. You would try to figure out users' intent and navigate them through to the solution. Unfortunately, it turned out to be very, very hard, and we've discontinued it since.
Do you think we'll ever pick it up again? Like, did
I
we
hope
understand
so.
why it didn't work?
It's just that users come for very different reasons to Help Center, and there are so many different problems. It's not like they just come for 2-3 problems, but the variety of problems and the kind of the granularity that you need to have for something like that is very demanding on the human reviewer side.
Right. I can also talk about one that we're working on currently, which is when we detect potentially abusive accounts, we don't get it right all the time, right? And at the kind of scale that we do this detection, even a tiny false positive rate will actually mean a very meaningful number of good people that we will potentially impact. And so we have, we have a sort of a secondary system after the original machine learning detection, which is trying to serve certain challenges to those accounts that will then basically be able to distinguish between, if this is a bot, for example. So there's a number of sort of SMS-based captures and all of this kind of stuff. And recently we started to do a lot of work in sort of optimizing that flow using machine learning. And I think that's going to be a really meaningful contribution to making sure that, the poor good people that our systems unfortunately sort of think are abusive or fake, we'll be able to clear those easily, and we're going to serve them good challenges that they can clear easily while still being able to filter out most of the bad accounts. So yeah, I think that's a interesting application. Cool. Fabrizio, you talked a little bit about research earlier. So can you maybe sort of develop a little bit on what you found sort of from the research world, moving more into a very product focused, I would say, environment in Facebook?
Yeah. I mean, it's a question that I never get, as you can imagine. No, it's actually, it's challenging, but also very, very rewarding. And sometimes you realize that there are aspects, when you work in academia in particular, that are usually overlooked, that in practice are very, very important. Just to make an example, when when in academia, maybe you want to write a paper and something, you improve your metric by 0.01 and you say, hey, okay, this is like nothing. I mean, it's really not meaningful. Then you go, in interest, you work in a company like Facebook, and 0.01% might mean like millions of people. And then you start realizing that maybe also that 0.001% is actually meaningful and important. So you tend to see problems from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. But also, of course, let's say you tend to focus more, let's say, on important problems. And I actually like to say sometimes that when you work in academia, you focus on looking for problems, and you struggle to find an interesting problem. When you work in a company like Facebook, you actually struggle to pick the most interesting one. In the sense that you have so many interesting problems to work on that you're like, okay, I'm gonna work on this now. Maybe this one. No, it's like a baby in a candy shop.
Prioritization is definitely an important skill to learn, right?
Yeah.
I would add maybe to that, talking about sort of research and maybe PhD work, that we do work on some of the problems we work on are more sort of, I would say, straightforward engineering problems where you sort of go through a design process. You kind of set out what you want to do, and you can pretty much achieve it in a straight line with a few hiccups here and there. I think machine learning, though, is often not like that, and you sometimes have very ill-posed problems, and you have to try a lot of different things, and you get a lot of different setbacks, as you described, Doria, before you get to something that actually works. And I think doing a PhD in particular, I think, can prepare you for that type of experience pretty well.
Yes.
So that's certainly something that I found.
True.
When things look kind of dire and you think nothing works, you kind of keep the hope somewhere and you keep going. Cool. So we have another question about team structure, and I think that kind of goes back to a previous point that we made. Champak asked this question: how are teams structured? For example, do we have functional people, that's how it's phrased here in the question, who propose ideas, and then technical people who implement them? So let's talk a little bit about, like, maybe even cross-functionally, sort of the different roles that sort of contribute to machine learning type projects. I don't know, Maria, you nodded a lot.
We definitely don't have the distinction between functional people and people that solve problems. Everyone is both. Anyone can propose solutions. Anyone can solve a problem. We typically do plannings a few times a year, say once or twice, where we brainstorm where the entire team gathers, brainstorms the ideas, and then we decide what are our priorities and what are the projects that we're going to pick up and who's going to pick up what. So I feel like everyone on the team, but being it a machine learning team or not, is pretty equal in that regards.
Right. I agree. I guess we can touch on a few of the other sort of functions that obviously we would work with in a team. So we'd have engineers. We would tend to have a PM who kind of makes sure that sort of the long-term strategy kind of is being developed. But again, I would say a lot of engineers get a lot of say in those processes. And it's quite funny sometimes to sort of see the dynamics there. And then data science is another big function, I would say, that contributes a lot to these kind of machine learning and data-heavy projects. And then we even have the role of data engineers. I don't know if you all have worked with those. I think they now exist pretty much in most teams who focus mostly on the pipelines, I guess, and making sure that our vast data infrastructure is kind of sane and keeps working so that we can collect lots of good training data and features and things.
So the project manager is closer to the users because we as engineers are a very specific group of people, and we might not understand all the challenges and issues users are experiencing. And there are people which help us to understand what we should prioritize.
Interesting. So can you talk a little bit more about how that might serve, like in your area, kind of how we can gather this type of information and how that might serve?
In ads, we talk directly to some big advertisers, and they are quite direct in what they want from us. well, we can't satisfy everyone, but we sure gather all the input and then we can prioritize.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Let's see where we gotten to. Bootcamp. That's something that a lot of people probably have heard about. It's a very special thing, I think, inside for Facebook. So maybe we can talk a little bit about, so that's basically the sort of onboarding, the first few weeks in Facebook, the experience that we have there. So maybe we can just take turns in telling some stories and sort of the things that we found there.
So the process is like, as you told us, you have, unlike other companies here at Facebook, you are not assigned to a team when you start, and you get to pick your team. You have a few weeks where you can chat to different teams and managers and engineers and solve some tasks for them, have a look at what they do day to day, and then when you find your perfect match, you can join the team. And along that, you have quite a few general classes about Facebook, the tools that everyone would need to know how to use.
Mm-hmm.
And you also make friends with your fellow boot campers, and then you have people that you know all around Facebook, and that can be very helpful, and it's good to have people around.
Great. Anything to add?
I think that one thing to add to Daria's point is the team selection part. So when you're in week 3, managers start reaching out to you, and you start reaching out to managers from teams that you're interested in. And the dynamic is very interesting because you get to pick up tasks from teams that you like, and then if you're still interested, you can go and sit with the team, have lunch with them, attend their meetings, kind of try it out, see what it feels like to be an engineer on the team. And if you don't like it, you can just pass and go somewhere else. And if you do, you can join. So that's a pretty neat
it's a great way to sort of remove some of the pressure of joining a new company, right? You sort of really get to choose. And
there is an even better one to remove the pressure of joining a big company. It's like on day 2 or 3, I don't remember exactly, you actually get to ship something in production. And it's kind of, surprising, because you see, okay, I'm here, I don't know what to do, but still, you can actually, again, just to get back to the infrastructure comment that I made before. It's so good that you can actually be productive from day 0, I would say. And also another aspect of bootcamp that I really, really enjoyed was to be assigned a mentor that is actually guiding you through the bootcamp, and it's helping you to adapt to the company. It's telling you, look, you could do this, you can do that, or let's pick the best task for you, let me help you out. Those that experience is rather unique, I would say, and really, really, really rewarding. I really enjoyed my bootcamp. Actually, I would not have minded if it was longer. It's really, really fun.
It's a great time for learning, I think. I touched languages and technologies that I hadn't touched before.
Code.
Yes, exactly.
It's really, really good.
Yeah. I do remember on my 5th day, I started my first bootcamp task, and it was making some meaningful fix to the composer, which is probably one of the most important parts of the Facebook code base. And I sort of hadn't really worked in PHP or whatever weird variant of PHP it was before, and I started sort of looking at this and sort of thinking about different ways of doing it. It wasn't really the way that the owner had described it, and then I sort of went over to that person, and he'd been at the company for 6 years, so he's 12 years now. He's probably one of the first people. And I started talking to him, and I thought, well, clearly this, he must know exactly what's going on, and my ideas probably are not good. But then at the end of the day, actually, we did end up implementing more or less my idea, and that actually felt really rewarding. I felt because day 5, not only do you ship something, but you actually make sort of a contribution in terms of the design, and that was really great. The second task was actually quite a big sort of clustering task that I worked on for entities. That get ingested into the graph, and sort of trying to dedupe them and things like that. So that was a really yeah, that was one of the bigger ones towards the end. But that was fun. I remember those days very fondly. Okay, great. Okay, a few more questions from the comments. Lewis is asking which programming languages are mostly used for ML. Let's go, run through. Let's see what
Python and C++. I would say we have quite a lot of infrastructural part which are written in Cafe 2, and so C++. And well, it depends. Like you might have to work on PHP and Haskell sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah.
Mostly PyTorch and Python.
Yeah, I think those product level ones are usually for logging the features and making sure you get the data that you need.
Yeah, just backend in C++, and your day-to-day analysis you can use IPython notebooks,
Right.
which is convenient.
But also our entire spam fighting system is written in Haskell, so
It is. If you do join Integrity,
yes,
you got to
you're
learn
good.
Haskell. There's no
That's
way
true.
around it.
And it's really fun.
It is
I really
fun.
like it.
Yes, I think
I really like it.
I think it is. Cool. Let's see what else we have here. This is a good one. What advice would you give to someone that would like to start a career in machine learning? Maybe what's helped you getting started. I guess you didn't really start. You did your internship in the machine learning kind of area. So
No.
do you remember what maybe helped you the most, sort of getting up to speed?
Well, you learn from your fellow teammates, right? That's the best option, I think. Yes, so you work with great people and they teach you about, your product that you're working on together, but also about what's used in Facebook. And then you start learning, and at some point you understand you already know something about it.
And then you start mentoring
Yeah,
others.
yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, exactly. Fabrizio, how do you recommend getting started with machine
yes,
learning?
so this is quite interesting in the sense that I see many people that are starting that are willing to start a career in machine learning by jumping into looking at building a convolutional neural network, RNN, stuff like, without actually understanding what they are doing. So I usually recommend people to actually look at the basics. I mean, it doesn't hurt actually to look at some linear algebra, some calculus and like analysis, mathematical analysis. It doesn't hurt. I can guarantee, and it helps actually. It helps a lot, especially if you really want to kind of understand and contribute, to the field in a meaningful way. Otherwise, you just end up by being like somebody that can kind of, or better, that try to glue together things that you don't even know what they are doing, but in the end they output 0 or 1 and you're happy with it. But usually this is not the ideal, I would say.
Maria, what's been your path to the machine learning world?
Well, I did my master's in machine learning, and I was interested in ML back when I was doing my bachelor's. But I do want to say that we do have a lot of people that come into the team without any ML experience, and they just kind of work with more experienced engineers by starting off with little tasks, maybe like starting with features and then getting bigger tasks to train models, and then slowly they move towards a state where they're an independent ML engineer.
Right.
But that is definitely a skill that can be practiced on the job.
I agree. I think there's definitely sort of a good, healthy mix to a team, right? You kind of want some experts that can help to sort of teach good practices, but then also it's definitely great to have people with very different strengths and backgrounds that can pick up the skills they need over time. Great. Let's finish off the last one quickly that we had sort of heard about before, and that we want to cover, and then we'll keep going on the questions from the comments. And that one was, what are the different ML kind of projects that live in the different offices? So we talked already about Facebook having a few global offices, and so maybe let's quickly talk about the different types of things that people do in those, and maybe I can start with sort of the other offices that are not represented here, and then we'll sort of go around and see. So I know in Tel Aviv there is kind of a new effort that's mostly focused on bringing machine learning to kind of infra, which I think is a really interesting angle. We manage huge amounts of machines. Again, we produce lots of amounts of data for logging, for just debugging, all sorts of things. How can you make sense of that, and how can you scale that in a meaningful way using machine learning? So that's something that's happening in Tel Aviv. In Paris, we have FAIR. We already briefly talked about that.
FAIR is working mainly, well, is working on many aspects like reinforcement learning problems. They have computer vision teams. They have NLP teams. Yep. If you guys are familiar with fast text, fast text was basically created in collaboration between Paris and New York. And what else? In Paris, there is also the team that is, let's say, responsible for learning to play, like video games, like yes.
Important research question.
Yeah, important research. Well, actually, they are, because if you are good at playing video games, maybe you can reuse the same, technology also to like do something, meaningful for the society. But, that's it. And in London, mostly NLP and computer vision.
On the FAIR side.
In the FAIR side. And
right.
AML is, again, NLP for integrity, model robustness, and also we have experts in dialogue understanding and dialogue modeling, which is a very, very important area and very fun, actually.
Yes.
I really like it. And
Then we have obviously ad ranking. Do you want to say any more about that? I think you've already given a pretty good pitch of the goal.
Yeah, but it's a pretty big team, so we have a part here in London, but they're also a huge part in the US.
Right.
And we collaborate with them.
Yeah. So then in London, I guess that leaves us with a big community integrity team that does... Actually, it's interesting. So the history there was sort of very much in sort of fighting attacks as they happened, and over time we started building much more sort of self-maintaining automated systems that can detect those things using machine learning. So we have a mixture of both right now, which is really fun, and that's sort of where the Haskell world comes from to some extent. We have a number of different areas in London on the community integrity front, looking at accounts, looking at a specific harmful behavior, and looking at identity and impersonation and things like that. And then we have Workplace, which is a product in itself, is sort of a version of Facebook for companies, but obviously Facebook itself has a lot of different ranking and suggestion products which sort of need adjusting for, I guess, pretty much environments with less data and probably also different kind of optimizations you want to do. So there's a ML team on the Workplace side. And then Maria, do you want to talk about the...
Yeah, so I used to work in Menlo Park, and now I work in Seattle. So in Menlo Park, there's no point listing all the teams because there's everything there. Yeah. Up in Seattle, we have a lot of integrity teams. So teams such as feed integrity and business integrity, content integrity, and pages integrity as well. We have search teams. So we have some ranking up there. We have... Goodwill teams, Messenger, that's right, Messenger assistants up there, and I think the AML is also up there.
AML, yes, in most offices. Yeah. Great. Okay, so lots of opportunity wherever anyone would choose to look or live. This one is an interesting one that. Kind of speaks to the life cycle and how we work as engineers. So do you need to find your next project once a project is completed? So that there's lots of different angles to this one.
Completed?
That's the first one, I guess, yes. Can you say a bit more about that?
Well, usually you tend to work on ambitious projects and projects that tend to span... at least in AML, but also in search we use.
I think in most projects.
Yeah, most projects are like that. So we tend to work on projects that span multiple, let's say halves, and therefore, usually what you do is that you you tend to ship something in production, and you observe, you work in iterations, and you decide what to do next on the basis of the results of the current iteration. So, I mean, you don't get bored, for sure. And, you really never finish a project in the sense that unless it gets shut down or something for several reasons. But otherwise, you usually tend to progress towards, a goal that is far away from you and not really visible.
Yeah.
What I've noticed is that even while you're working on one bigger project that can span multiple years, you get other things to work on, and some of them might grow really big, some of them might shut down. But in my 4.5 years here, I never had to go and proactively look for a project. They always somehow found me.
That's a great metaphor. And usually, as Fabrizio was saying earlier, usually there's like 20 coming at you, and you sort of have to pick and choose. That's very true. I guess one thing I would add to your point is there's obviously an element of like these sort of ambitious long-term projects. There's also an element of prioritizing and knowing when sort of the returns are kind of diminishing, and it might make sense to think about a very different angle to the same problem, or like indeed a very different problem space to sort of try and align with the mission or the vision that the team has at this point. So yeah, I think it's sort of a mix of definitely longer term iterations and being sort of flexible about working on different things to achieve the goal of the team.
Yeah, the priorities change over time, so you might need to focus on different things. And even if one project is still not perfect, it might not be as important to work on it as, start something new.
Right. I think this is an area where infrastructure becomes quite important as well, because you then don't want to have sort of the burden of having to maintain this manually, and sort of you really want this to be on autopilot in a reasonably good state, I think. Great. Let's see. What else do we have? This is an interesting one that I get a lot in interviews, actually. The difference between data science and machine learning. So I guess we talked already a little bit about sort of the cross-functional world and different types of roles contributing to project. So maybe we can just give a few examples, maybe, of how data scientists and engineers work together on different projects.
Data scientists are usually the ones to analyze experiments and the experiment impact to, other metrics. Say, when you're shipping an experiment, you want to make sure that you're not breaking any core metrics, and that's something the data science would do. Data science would come and say you're trying to detect a type of objectionable content. They will go and break down who is posting this type of content, where is it getting posted to, what is the biggest distribution, like the biggest sorts of distribution, and so on, whereas machine learning engineers would, based on that data, structure their experiments.
There is another, in my opinion, important function, which is like identifying opportunities and sizing opportunities, which is very, very important. That again, speaking of which project to pick, data scientists, in my opinion, are like the backbone of this process, because they can really, really help, directing you towards the most important projects. So that's another important thing to add.
But as an ML engineer, you still have to be prepared to be able to do that yourself, because there's a lot of things and you can't just spawn off all the things on the data scientist. So yeah, looking at the raw data and trying to find patterns and see what's wrong, that's a huge part of your work as well.
Right. And I would also say that's sort of a function of maybe the maturity of the project you might be joining, right? Like you might have projects sort of like maybe ads ranking that's actually quite mature, I would say, although you might disagree, I don't know. But sort of relative to other areas, I think, the kind of problem space is pretty well understood. Probably the kind of functions have all ramped up. And sort of can help each other. Whereas if you sort of have a small project that maybe has 2 or 3 engineers on it, there might not be any support from the data science function yet. And so you get all of this exciting data analysis to do yourself. Okay, great. I think we're out of time, unfortunately. So thanks everyone for joining me, and thanks everyone on the live stream. I hope this was useful and you enjoyed it. So I would like to say goodbye and thanks again for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.